Hi everybody and welcome to day 5 of Cavemas. If you celebrate Christmas, I'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas today, and for those of you who don't, I hope you are warm, well and safe. For today's video we are doing our fireside question and answer, and I would like to thank you all sincerely for all your amazing questions. Your questions have brought up some interesting discussions, so it's been entertaining already and we've not even finished filming the video. So what I have done is I have a list of all the questions in this notebook here, and I have colour coded them, you're going to love this, into categories. And it's funny that there's a recurring theme. I'm going to do my best to get through all of them, and that's one of the advantages of having a small channel, is that I might be able to get round everyone's questions. So we're going to do our best to get through them. The common themes, which I was quite surprised about, obviously there are plenty of questions surrounding art and colouring, which is what you would hope considering what the channel category is. All of you seem to have a fixation with the farming side of things, and I don't know whether that's because maybe some of you aren't familiar with it, it's new to you. And also there seems to be a huge amount of questions on what I like to eat. So I don't know who that says more about, me or you guys. I would also like to point out just before I start on the questions that I am so warm already, and I've only been sitting here for 2 minutes. So if I start to sweat slightly, I might have to take my Christmas cardi off. You guys wouldn't mind. Also, just before we get going, here is my fire in its entirety. It is lovely, but it is very, very warm. Alright, so let's get cracked on, or else we'll be here until next Christmas. The first set of questions that I'm going to answer are the farm related questions, because as I say, there seems to be an awful lot of you quite interested in that kind of stuff. So I'm going to start with those, and I'm going to start by answering the most popular question by far out of everything that I've been asked, and that is have you ever considered doing a video about a day in the life of the farm? Now that question originally came from Sherry, so thank you Sherry, and there was at least 4 or 5 others of you that have said yes, I'd like to know about that too. The answer to that question is a flat no. Number one, because this is an art channel, and while it's fun to have snippets and things in, I wouldn't want to take too far away from the original purpose of the channel. Secondly, it's actually about a privacy thing. Most of you know that I'm actually quite a private person, in that I try to protect some of my personal details and the identity of my family and friends. And that's something that's quite important to me. If I were to do a vlog style video on a day in the life of the farm, a few of the things that would be exposed would not necessarily put us at risk. That is very, very dramatic sounding. But things like the layout of our farm, the location of our farm, there are lots of people watching and things go missing from farms. Also as well, you're opening yourself up for a lot of criticism. Not everyone agrees with farming in various, in various sort of principles and religions and that kind of thing. It is a very subjective thing, and it's not something that I am comfortable broadcasting out onto the internet. What I will do, however, though, seeing as you're all really, really interested in it, I will stick in a few snippets of video every now and then about things that are going on out in the farm, perhaps some lambs being born, that kind of thing, and that might help to satisfy your farmy and agricultural curiosity. Let me know how that sounds. I would love to hear from you about that in the comments. Katara had asked about the logic behind naming our dogs, and as it stands, we have 3 dogs just now. We have 1 Jack Russell, we have 2 collies. The dog naming thing's quite interesting, because we had Jock, who is our oldest collie. We bought him at 16 months old, so he already had his name. Our last collie, Mist, who is the one that's no longer with us, we bought her at 18 months old, so she already had her name. We chose Pip's name ourselves, and our Jack Russell, whose name is Tilly, she already had her name before I met her, because my husband had her from when she was a tiny little puppy. However, there is actually a logic pattern to naming the dogs. With working dogs, traditionally, I don't know if this is in the rest of the world as well, but certainly in the UK, female sheepdogs tend to be named after things out of nature, like mist, sky, that sort of thing. With all sheepdog names, ideally you want a one-syllable name because it's short and it's sharp and it's easy. We picked Pip for that reason, and also because Pip is a name that you can say with a sheep whistle in your mouth. You don't have to take your whistle out to say Pip. So that was why we named her that. We did have Meg picked out, but when we went to get her, we decided she didn't look like a Meg, so we went with Pip instead. So if you're not naming your female sheepdogs after things in nature, they tend to have sort of old-fashioned, I don't want to offend anybody if you've got an old-fashioned name, but they tend to have traditional girls' names, and the boys tend to have traditional boy names. So Jock is a Scottish slang word for the name John, and hence the reason Jock has his name. But common names for boy dogs are Craig, Jim, Bob, all these kind of things. Ben is another popular one. So that there is like a logic to it, and we tend to stick to that tradition quite rigidly. So that's the theory behind naming dogs. Someone else had also asked the names of our dogs. I'm just trying to find out. Kimmy. Yes. Some of you might have a bit of confusion because we have nicknames for all our dogs as well as their actual, their proper Sunday names. And Jock, who is the oldest collie, sometimes we just call him the boy, and it's because he's the only boy. So you'll hear me saying the boy sometimes, I'm referring to him. Pip, at the moment, she just gets Pip or Pippy. Sometimes I call her Stinky or Poopy, because she does a lot of that. But I'm sure another name for her will develop as time goes on. The Jack Russell is the most confusing one. Tilly is her correct name. She's the oldest dog. She's nearly 14 now. And we went through a period of calling her Tilly Willy Woo Woo, which then got shortened to Tilly Woo and is now just Woo. And she answers to Woo. So again, you will hear me talking about Woo. It is not a separate dog, it is the Jack Russell. I actually very rarely call her Tilly unless I'm giving her into trouble. I just tend to call her Woo. Our old dog as well, Mist. Our secondary name for her was Jeff. And she answered to it. There was no particular reason, we just started calling her Jeff. But that was absolutely fine as well. So, Kimmy, I hope that answers your question fully, as well as answering Katara your question too. On to the next farm question. I love this question. This question also comes from Katara, and it is, if I could add another animal to my farm, what would it be? And the answer to that is pigs. I love pigs. We don't have any pigs. And when I did my degree at university, my dissertation was on pig behaviour, and it was singly the most fascinating scientific experiment I have ever done in my life, and it was so much fun. They are so clever, so clever. I highly rate pigs. They smell a bit, but once you get past the smell, they're amazing animals. And in the past, I have had pigs of my own. They're spectacular animals. They really are. If you can get past the smell, they are so worth it. So, and I'm always on at Mr. Jem to let me have some pigs, and he keeps saying no. So yes, I loved that question. I really did. Kim, hello Kim. Kim has asked, what type of farm do you have? We have a mixed farm. We have quite a large arable side. We mostly grow wheat, barley and oats. We are not in a climate to be able to accommodate anything exotic. The farms that are in our area, we have very good soil here in terms of Scottish soil, not compared to the rest of the world. So that teamed with our climate, we do have quite a lot of vegetable growers round about us. We are on quite hilly areas though, which isn't ideal. Potatoes is the main thing round about, and carrots as well, but we tend to just grow whole crops like wheat and barley and that kind of thing. We also have a livestock side as well, which is primarily Aberdeen Angus cattle. We have beef cattle, we have no dairy cattle, we do not milk cows, and we have quite a lot of cows. We also have, now I'm just trying to make sure I get everything in here. We do have sheep, again because we're in a hilly area. Sheep are much better suited to the poorer ground, and in the winter they are a lot hardier as well and require less looking after than some of the breeds of cows. We have deer. We actually have wild deer that float about and eat all our crops, but we do have housed deer. They're in paddocks. So we have some of those. We have some llamas, and they are also hilarious. They're not as clever as pigs, but they are really funny animals. And we have some goats as well. So we have quite a mixture. The main enterprises though are the beef cattle and our crops. The last two questions on the farming side of things, which have both come from Veronica, and Veronica asked, is the farm a long-standing enterprise? Yes, this farm and the way that it operates was here long before we were, and we've only been here 3 years, and not much has changed. Not much has changed really. The way that we operate is pretty much the way it was when we arrived. We've just kind of tweaked things and made it better. And the other question that Veronica had asked is, what work do I do apart from the farm? I graduated with a degree in animal bioscience, which was directly linked to agriculture, so I suppose I'm a farmer scientist. And the work that I do now, there is a disease called Johne's disease, which has been in the media for its links to Crohn's disease, and I spend a lot of time talking to and advising farmers on how to control the disease, testing measures that they can use, that kind of thing. So I talk to a lot of farmers, some of them nicer than others, on a daily basis, and that's why I work in the cave, because I work from home, because I do most of my work by telephone. I am quite excited because at the end of January I am going to the National Johne's Conference, and to someone who is not into things like that, it's the most incredibly boring thing in the world, but to geeky, sciencey people that like diseases, that sounds wrong. I like disease. I don't like diseases, but you know, someone that is interested in diseases, I'm looking forward to it. So that is all the farming questions. Let's move on to the art and colouring questions, seeing as, you know, colour caving that. So Yvonne had asked me, have I ever coloured the same picture twice? That was loud. Have I ever coloured the same picture twice? And the answer to that is no. I see a lot of people who have coloured the same picture because they've had another idea for it. It's not something I've done. It's something I don't actually have an inclination to do, because I think the second time round I would find it tedious or like more of a chore, and I wouldn't get much enjoyment out of it, so probably not something I would actually want to do. I'd love to hear if you guys have coloured something more than once. Yvonne, I know you said that you had ideas for other ones, but if anyone else has done it, let me know. That would be great. Kim asks, the first mishap or embarrassing moment when I began the channel. What a great question. I haven't really had anything embarrassing, and the joy of doing this and not having it live is that you can edit out anything that's a mistake. But in terms of mishaps, you guys have seen them all. If you watch the blooper reels, they're everywhere. I haven't actually created a video without making a mistake and having to edit it out and go, better save that for the bloopers. The first thing that I was horrified at was one of the first videos that I filmed that was more of a sort of colour and chat style, you know, it was more of a relaxed colouring video, and when I went to edit that video back, the number of times that I repeated words or phrases, I irritated myself, and it's something that I was just like, I can't believe, you know, you don't realise that you're saying things like that because it's sort of automatic, it just comes out your mouth. But I was horrified at the number of times I said and it's something I go back through every single second of all my videos now and try and pull out as many of those as possible, just so I don't bug anybody else and, you know, put them off watching the channel. So I'd say that's probably the closest thing I've had to a mishap, other than saying things like beans instead of bones. Oh, goodness me. All right then, moving on to her other question, which was, there I go again, see I just did it. Kim's other question was, what prompted me to start the channel? That is a great question as well. I just kind of felt that when I look through social media, which is a really good source of inspiration these days, there was a plethora of artists, colourists, people just creating stuff, and it was at such a high standard. And when I started watching YouTube videos as well, most of the people that have high quality content and that are quite likeable and, you know, seem to be sort of growing with their channel, most of these people are really experienced. Most of them went to art school or did like a, you know, a sort of post-grad. They have some kind of qualification in art, and in today's society, the pressure that's put on people to be amazing or, you know, to produce really high standards of work all the time, it can be quite, I'm trying to think of the right word, it puts a lot of pressure on you. And it makes you think that, oh, you're not good enough for this, you're not good enough to do that. And I just felt that it was time somebody came along who was at the very beginning of their art stroke colouring journey and let people see that the progress and the standard that these people are at and have made, it's not something that's just there. You don't just start colouring and you're spitting out absolutely beautiful Johanna Basford pictures. It takes a lot of learning, a lot of hours of actually just sitting and scribbling away and picking up on all these things and techniques and looking at other people's pictures on Instagram. And I just wanted to show that just because you're not at that standard and because you're not technically qualified to do art, that you can still have a YouTube channel and you can still share your work and what makes you happy with other people. And I just think it's really important that people are able to see progress from that day dot onwards, and that was why I wanted to start it, because it's kind of a documentation of my journey and how my skills are improving, if they're improving. And I think seeing that imperfect side is really helpful, and it encourages people to at least try. You know, you don't have to be amazing. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Kim. John also left me 2 questions. You guys are great with the multiple questions. Your first question, John, was about finishing off the reindeer drawing that I did a couple of days ago. Pretty sure that's been answered already. If you haven't watched it, get over and watch the second part of that. His other question relates to backgrounds, and this is something that I get asked quite a lot. Lots of people, when they first start out colouring and drawing, are very fixated on the main focal point of the picture, which really makes sense when you think about it, but want to become a bit more adventurous and putting in some backgrounds. It's something that personally I like to do backgrounds sometimes, but I can quite often look at a picture and think, I like it just the way that it is. If you're new to backgrounds or you want to try experimenting with them either in your colouring pages or your artwork, my strongest suggestion for you is to start with the medium that you're most comfortable with. So if you're used to using pencil, try doing backgrounds in pencil. Start small, start simple. So the best thing to do for me was I started doing backgrounds with coloured pencil, and the first thing I did was just try and put a bit of a gradient in the background. It was nothing fancy, but it's a really good starting point, and then build outwards from there, and you can get more adventurous as you know, as your experience grows and as you get more practiced at it. I have done a video on different background media. I have 2 dogs. You're going to see a tail in a minute, I think. Yeah, I have done a video on different background mediums, so if anybody wants to check that out, I shall leave a link down in the description somewhere for you to go and have a look. I think as well, experimenting is really important with backgrounds. If you've spent a lot of time on the main part of your picture, there is that fearfulness that you're going to mess it up if you put a background in. The best thing that you can do is try out what you want to do on a scrap piece of paper. Say for example, you have a colouring page that is a vase of flowers. On your scrap piece of paper, just draw a rectangle with like some spiky bits coming out of it, just to represent the focal point of your picture, and try your background out and see how well you're going to get on with it before you take it into your main picture. So that is my advice on that, and that is purely just from personal experience and nothing else. The next art related question comes from Smudge Kitty. Hello Smudge Kitty. What is the best, what colouring book and pencils would you recommend for a newbie? This is also very subjective, and I'm going to have to pause here to take this cardigan off because I am melting. Yeah, the best book and pencils for a newbie, very subjective, and it's because there's quite a lot of factors that can affect that. Personally, I think in terms of a colouring book, you have to enjoy the subject matter, or else you're going to become disinterested very quickly. And I also think as well that with pencils, it depends on your budget. And I hate to have to say that, but it really does. I think for someone that maybe hasn't coloured before and don't know if they like to colour, my recommendation would be to buy a set of relatively inexpensive pencils, such as The Black Widow pencils, or perhaps the Faber-Castell Goldfaber pencils. Again, it's very budget dependent, but if you can get a half decent set of pencils, I've heard wonderful things about the Artesia pencils as well, and they won't break the bank either. But if you don't know what they like colouring, I would suggest buying a set of maybe 24, 32, something like that, of a mid-range colour pencil, and go onto the internet and download as many free PDFs from reputable sources, not off Pinterest or Google. Go to colourists' websites of people that you know. You can Google them to see what their colouring pages look like, and print off some PDFs of their stuff if they have some freebies, and try them out. Don't even buy a colouring book, and that will let you find out whether you like colouring or not. And then if you do, you can take that next step and buy some of their books. Just as a general rule, when people start colouring, I find that Hannah Carlson's books are a good starting point, because her books are always a mixture of simpler drawings and more complex, you know, much more detailed work as well. So it's a book that will grow with you, because you want to start with something simple with you know, quite a large surface area in each section of the picture for you to colour, until you start to sort of hone your skills. But again, Hannah Carlson books, that they're part of that sort of, not niche, but they're not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody wants to colour flowers and women with, you know, long flowing hair and animals with crowns on. I get that, but just as an example that, you know, there's a lot of variation in our books, and that's a pretty good place to start. Yvonne asks, do I have any strange places for storage? Now Yvonne, I hope you don't mind me sharing this. Yvonne has a tin of pencils and a colouring book in her linen cupboard behind some towels. I personally do not have anything stashed in strange places. I don't know whether it's my freakishly organised self, or the fact that I have a whole room dedicated to keeping things like that, and there's no reason for me to have anything in strange places. So no, I don't, but I really do like the fact that people are keeping colouring books in their linen cupboards behind some towels. If any of you have strange places that you keep things, let us know, because that is interesting and it's also very entertaining. So, you know, does anybody keep you know, pencils in beside their potatoes in their kitchen or anything like that? Let me know in the comments. Laurie asks, the most difficult art related challenge. Laurie, what I want you to do is, I want you to hang on a couple of days. There's a video coming up, and that video will answer your question perfectly. I don't really want to talk about it because I don't want to spoil the video, but I promise you that will answer your question, and that is the most difficult thing I have ever done. Oh, I meant to look this up before I started here. Joy asks, how many Copic markers do you have? I'm going to count them right now. I'll be back. I have been encountered 152 Copic markers, and they are all Copic sketch markers as it stands at the moment. I am in the process of building my collection up, so that number is due to increase. Probably not until into the new year now, because they are very expensive. The top 5 art supplies I would like to try and why. I don't think I've got 5 that I want to try. One that I do really want to try is charcoal, because it's kind of like, it feels like a bit of an extension of graphite, and it's a medium that can be used in conjunction quite easily with graphite. And I think that my joy of doing graphite drawings would be extended out by using charcoal as well. The only kind of downside to that is that it's messy. The other thing that I would really like to try are pan pastels. It's something that I don't have, I've never tried. They're quite expensive. I have a sort of love-hate relationship with soft pastels, and I don't know, I just yeah, I just want to give them a go and see what I can do with them. Again, I think it might encourage me to put more backgrounds into even just my sketches, like my sketchbook, because I find that the soft pastels that I have are little oblong sticks about this length, and they are super messy, and it's kind of the reason I don't use them very often, just because they're bloody hard work, to be perfectly honest. So I'd like to give pan pastels a go. The other thing that I would really like to do is I would like to do some oil painting. I had an oil painting set when I was really young, and that's because I used to watch the Joy of Painting with Bob Ross all the time, and I only ever made one painting, and it was of a teddy bear. I have no idea what happened to that oil painting. I was quite proud of it at the time, actually. I couldn't even tell you. I just remember that the background was yellow and green. It was like yellow ochre and whatever shade of green I had. That's the only oil painting I ever did. I don't know what happened to the stuff after that either. But yeah, I would like to do like a follow some of Bob Ross's videos as well and just see if that, you know, if I've actually got that in me. I think that'd be great fun. But again, that's something, I don't have any of those supplies. I am not a painter. It's a very expensive pursuit, so that might have to wait a considerable amount of time. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else. I've pretty much tried, well, I've tried a lot of things now, and I've tried a lot of things that people wouldn't even consider art products for art, so okay, I hope that goes halfway to answering a question. Debbie has asked about left-handed art gear. As a left-handed person, it's not really finding things that are good for left-handed people, it's working out what's not good and avoiding it. I am what I call a hardcore lefty. I favour the entire left side of my body. A lot of left-handed people will just draw and write with their left hand, but when they go to do other things, they will use their right hand. If I was to kick a football, I would kick it with my left foot. And when I'm opening things or playing hockey, I used to play hockey at school, grass hockey, and I had a left-handed stance there as well. So what I tend to find is that things like left-handed scissors totally blow my mind because I can't use them, I can't work them. I'm fine with normal people's scissors. So it's not really a case, Debbie, of finding things for lefties. It's avoiding the things that don't work for lefties. One of the things I have never got on well with is rollerball pens. I can't write with them properly. They seem to skip a lot. They're dead scratchy. I don't like them. But also when I'm drawing as well, they're okay, but I'm better off just using something else. So that's something that I would avoid. Also, my 3D pen, the ergonomic design is meant to be comfortable, but it has been designed with right-handed people in mind because the trigger button that actually feeds the filament is where your right thumb would be if you had it in your right hand. So being left-handed, it's like kind of where your ring finger is, and it's just uncomfortable. And when you're using the 3D pen, it's something that you're going to sit and do for, you know, periods of time. It's not like a 2-minute thing, so you do get uncomfortable. Other than that, there's nothing that I can really think of. A lot of the solutions to left-handed problems, like the Silver Surfer, you know, when you get graphite all the way down this side of your hand, that can be remedied by just turning your paper. It's that simple. Other than that, I can't really think of anything else offhand. If I do think of anything else, I will mention it in a future video and hopefully you can pick that up. Kim asks, when did you start colouring as an adult? I think, I was trying to work this out, I think I started colouring about 2.5 years ago, but I really didn't do it seriously. I just picked it up every now and then, and it only sort of started to accumulate the beginning of last year. The beginning of 2017. So yeah, maybe about 2.5 years, I think, since I started. Kimmy K asks, what advice would you give for someone with a pencil addiction? I can't help you. I really can't help you. It's something I genuinely don't have a problem with. I don't like clutter and I am not a hoarder. I periodically clean out my art supplies, and if things haven't been used or I don't have much love for them, I give them to someone or put them in a giveaway. I have no desire to hoard pencils. I am a creature of habit. The two main sets of pencils that I use all the time are my Polychromos and my Prismacolor. I have other types of pencils, like other mediums, like the Inktense pencil and the Graphitint, but for actual normal colouring pencils, I have two sets of pencils. I always have had, and I'm perfectly happy with that. So I'm afraid you're going to have to go elsewhere for advice and therapy about your pencil addiction. Beth asked a really good question as well about colouring. She said, if you had 1 year and one colouring book and one medium, what would they be? Now it's interesting because I've actually already done this. The first colouring book that I got was Enchanted Forest by Johanna Basford, and that was given to me, and that was how my adult colouring started. And I coloured in that book exclusively. I didn't go and buy any other colouring books. I had no need to because I had this book full of like a million things to colour. And I used a set of Prismacolor pencils and that for well over a year, and I did not colour in anything else. So that kind of answers that question. I would do it again. I would do it all over again. It is nice now. I did get to a point where I felt I was just going through the motions colouring the pages in that book, and that was when I decided to go and buy another colouring book. And see, just changing over to something else, it made me more careful of my work. It made me appreciate the Johanna Basford book more because I'd come away from it. So I wouldn't, by choice, I wouldn't recommend doing that, sticking to one colouring book for a year with only one set of pencils, but it is doable and I quite enjoyed it. It's still my favourite book as well, but I think it's just because it's the first one I ever had. Wendy has asked another question that a lot of people ask me a lot of the time: how to choose a colour palette once you've chosen a picture, and she's asked me how I do it. And what I tend to find is when I look at a colouring page, there will be an item on that page that is speaking to me and says, I need to be this colour. So for example, not that long ago, I coloured in a picture in Johanna Basford's Enchanted Forest, and it was of a frog on a lily pad. And I knew when I looked at that picture that I did not want that frog to be green. He was not going to be green. And I chose my colour palette around that. So what I normally do is, if I have something in the picture that's speaking to me, or maybe one or two things, I will take those colours and I will go get my colour wheel and I will see what else fits in with that. And again, I've done a video on how to use a colour wheel, and I have mentioned it in other videos as well. So if you go back to the Colouring for Beginners playlist, you can find that original video in there. And I just try and match up the colours as best I can. But I also make the decision as to whether it's going to be quite a limited palette and quite a cohesive piece, or whether it's going to be what I call a multicolour swap shop piece, where you're just using any pencil and you're not worried about a colour scheme or a theme. And in busier pictures, I tend to find that that's better and it's more fun because you're not restricting yourself. But I would say that if you have a picture that you look at and nothing springs to mind straight away, I would leave that picture and go back to it and wait until it speaks to you, and then use colour theory to pick out colours to complement or contrast with the one that you've picked. So Mr. Frog in Enchanted Forest ended up being blue and green. Blue and green, no he didn't, he ended up being blue and purple, and I used green in the background instead. So there you go. I hope that helps a little bit too. What is my favourite weight of paper to colour on? I do not have a favourite type of paper, and I do not have a favourite colour weight. I do not have a favourite paper weight either. It depends on the type of paper, as in, is it marker paper, is it cartridge paper, is it, you know, and it also depends what medium I'm using as well in terms of pencils, because what works well for Prismacolors in terms of paper doesn't work well into, you know, sometimes for polychromos. So I don't really have a favourite paper, I'm not that precious over it. Bettina has asked, if I had a year on an island, what 3 art supplies would I take? This is super easy for me. It would be a sketchbook, a pack of mechanical pencils and a kneadable eraser, and I would be quite happy, because that is all I need, and that is my favourite thing to do when I am arting, is just sit with a sketchbook and graphite and scribble. Interestingly, Bettina hadn't long asked that question, and Shilpa also asked a similar question, and she said if you could take one colouring book and one medium, aside from your accessories, you know, like an eraser and a sharpener, to a desert island, what would you take? And I think I would have to take one of Kirby Rosanna's books, just because there's so much to colour and it would definitely keep me occupied for a year. In terms of the medium, it would have to be Inktense pencils, and that's just because I would have the variety of using them as normal colouring pencils, but I could like dip them in the water around the island, and then I could colour in and use them as water-based pencils. Sandy, I've kind of answered your question already. When did I start drawing and colouring? Say colouring about 2.5 years ago, but not seriously till maybe like a year and a bit. No, it's more than a year and a bit, maybe 2 years ago. And I started drawing in January of this year. I have not been drawing a full year. Obviously before that, I mean, I drew as a child and I painted with my Bob Ross obsession as a child, but I never took classes or did anything seriously. I only actively pursued drawing in January of 2018. The last question in terms of art and colouring comes from Annalise. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Annalise. I'm very sorry if I've not. And she asks probably my favourite arty question, and that is, which are the main colourists that inspire you? Peter Hewitt had a huge influence on me when I started colouring, and I just love her stuff. I just love her work. and I love the way that she teaches people. I think she's an excellent teacher, and she's very calm and laid back, and she's quite down to earth, and I kind of think that I identify with her, and that's maybe why I liked her. But even her artwork is stunning, and she doesn't do as much of that on her YouTube channel as she does with her colouring, but her artwork is really good as well, and I really appreciate it. Other people in terms of colourists, I don't really have a lot of inspiration from colourists. There's quite a few colourists I follow on Instagram. There is a lady called Black Aneri, and she is absolutely amazing, and when you look at her colouring pages you think that it's her own artwork. She is absolutely stunning. There are so many. Another Instagrammer that I follow is Rose Lipner. Her stuff, I can't remember her tag, but her pictures are really good as well. I tend to take my inspiration from the artist, and a lot of the colouring that I do is because I like the artist's artwork. So Nicholas Chandra Vianata, or Nick Filbert is otherwise known, Bennett Klein, Kirby Rosannas, they're some of my favourites, and it's because their artwork is just absolutely, you know, it blows you away. Their artwork is just line work, but the line work is a standalone piece of art, and that's kind of what I like about it. So that rounds up all of the art and colouring questions. Moving on to the next category, which is food and drink. I just think it's really funny that loads of you have asked stuff about this. Katara asked 2 questions. She said, what is my favourite type of cheese? Due to my Italian lineage, I am a huge fan of some mozzarella, but proper buffalo mozzarella, and I love a good bit of smelly parmesan as well. She also asked if I could only have one type of cookie for the rest of my life, what would it be? I do not have a particularly sweet tooth, and I wouldn't be bothered if I never had another cookie for the rest of my life. If I had to have one though, it would be a toss-up between an Oreo, because I do quite like Oreos, but there is a biscuit you get in Scotland, or cookie, and it's called an Abernethy biscuit, and it's not quite shortbread and it's not quite a biscuit, it's somewhere in the middle, and they're so good dipped in a cup of tea. So I would probably go for them, I think. Katara had also asked, am I an egg yolk or an egg white person? There is no such thing. I like eggs. The whole egg's fine. And her last question, which I found quite amusing, I don't know why, but she asks, if you were going to be executed, what would your last meal be? What a question. If I was in the position of being executed, my last meal would definitely be an Italian one, probably something with garlic bread. And waffles. I would have waffles for, I never eat desserts. I am not a sweet tooth person, and the only thing when I go out to eat in a restaurant, the only thing that will make me have a dessert are Belgian waffles, and I love them. So I would have some Belgian waffles after my pasta dish or Italian dish. Before I pop my clogs, that would be perfect. Okay, Sandy had asked about my favourite sipping whisky. Now there has been a bit of discussion around the whisky drinking thing, and I am a bit of a traitor to my nationality, well, half of my nationality. I don't actually like Scottish whisky, I think it stinks. So that's the end of that question. Kimmy's asked what I drink when I'm colouring. That solely depends on what time of day it is. If I am colouring first thing in the morning, it's tea. It's always tea because I like tea and I drink a lot of tea. If it's in the afternoon, I usually drink flavoured water or cordial, you know, like diluted juice. And we have a really nice flavour, and it's orange and mango. And even in the winter it makes you feel summery, so I tend to drink that. I do suffer quite badly with sore heads sometimes, and by drinking, and it's usually pint glasses of either juice or flavoured water, it just helps to keep me hydrated, which lessens the chances of getting a really bad sore head. If it's in the evening, and only some evenings, my tipple of choice is Jack Daniels and Diet Coke when I'm colouring, and it's more or less my tipple of choice all the time. I do like to drink beer as well, but Jack Daniels is better because you kind of sip it while you're colouring. So I suppose that kind of goes back to Sandy's question. My favourite sipping whisky is Jack Daniels. Ta-da! The last food and drink related question comes from Shilpa, and she asked about comfort food, and my comfort food again is Italian food because we ate a lot of it at home with my family when I was younger, because I am half Italian, my dad is Italian. And yeah, so anything that falls into that category really. Mostly pasta dishes though. I can eat pasta to, you know, I could eat pasta forever. I really could. And it's a go-to for me. So yeah, a really good bolognese, or oh yeah, with drippy garlic bread and some crispy salad, perfect. I would also like to hear about everyone else's comfort food, because Shilpa said that she's very interested in, you know, in what other people deem comfort food. So if you'd like to comment on that as well, because Shilpa's interested in it too, then please feel free to tell us in the comments. The next category is travel. There was 1 or 2 questions that you guys had asked about, you know, going to places and things like that. Kathy had asked if I've ever been to Dublin to see the bog bodies. I haven't. I've been to Dublin a long time ago when I was young, and it was basically to get drunk, but the less said about that the better. And I've heard about it, but it's not something I've done. Mr. Jem's parents do stay in the south of Ireland, but they're in the north part of the south of Ireland, so from there to Dublin's a bit of a trek, so it's not even as if, you know, I'm in the vicinity anytime we're over, but it's something that I would like to do because I think it's fascinating. Next travel question was the top 3 choices to go anywhere in the world and why, and that was someone called, it's either Jess Suvali or Jess Suvali. Jess, I'm really sorry if I've messed that up for you. I feel terrible already. Yeah. Yeah, so 3 choices to go anywhere in the world and why. Number 1 would be Alaska. I have a writer friend who took his motorbike and went round Alaska on his motorbike, and he decided to write a book about it, and it was awesome. I know nothing about motorbikes and I knew nothing about Alaska, and just reading that made me want to go do it. Definite for me. The 2 other places that I'd like to go, I'd really like to go and climb Machu Picchu. That is something that is definitely on my bucket list. My 3rd choice to go anywhere in the world, I've always said that I'd really like to go and see the Aurora Borealis. Sometimes apparently you can see it from certain places in Scotland, but I'd like to go really far north to do that. That would be fun. Again, that just sort of appeals to my sort of slightly scientific geeky side, I suppose. Plus it's really pretty. That kind of covers off Beth's question about dream vacation destination, because it would be one of those. My dream destination would probably be one of those 3. Tracy asked, have you ever visited the US? No, I haven't, but I would like to. And the first thing that I would do when I was over in the US is I would buy up all the art supplies that are really freaking expensive in the UK. You guys get such a good deal on loads of good stuff, like loads of really cool stuff, and we've got to pay through the nose for it. So that is the first thing that I would do. And that is not state specific. States I would like to visit are all the ones with big lakes, because you guys over there, your lakes are like the size of our oceans. And I appreciate beauty in nature, so I would like to do all that kind of stuff. I would like to go to Washington State and visit my friend that I've just talked about that did the motorbike around Alaska. I'd really like to do that too. And I'd also like to go to some of the farming states just to see how different agriculture, well I know how different agriculture is in the US compared to the UK, but I would like to see it in action. That would be pretty cool as well. So there you go. Oh, okay, yes, no, there's 1 category left and I've just marked it personal. Sandy asks, why do you call your husband Mr. Jim? This is clearly just lost in translation. Sandy, I call him Mr. Jem, as in my name is Jem, my husband is Mr. Jem. So I hope that makes sense to you. The reason that I call him Mr. Jem is because I want to protect his privacy. I respect his privacy. If he decides to come and do something on the channel, which I really don't think would happen, then by all means that's fine. But you only need to know him as Mr. Jem. He's my husband. He's not relevant. He's not relevant. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. But anyway, that is why I call him Mr. Jem. Katara had asked me if there was a Christmas tradition that I particularly love, and yes there is, and it's going to be happening just shortly. In our house we have a turkey at Christmas because that's kind of the done thing, but we also have an Italian lasagna, and it's not a traditional layered lasagna, it's what we call a peasant's lasagna, and it's the way that my grandmother used to make it. And it's basically like a bolognese casserole, but the idea behind it was the ingredients, most of them came from your farm, because my you know, my grandparents were farming as well, and it has huge chunks of cheese and boiled eggs through it with pasta, and you stick it in the oven for like 3 days and it's absolutely amazing. So we eat that on Christmas Day, and you only make that lasagna for special occasions. Like, you only get it at birthdays and Christmas because it's a pain in the ass, it takes forever, but it's so good and it is so full of calories, and that's why I get so fat. So that is one Christmas tradition that I will always keep. Mr. Jem isn't that keen on it, although he more or less eats anything. He would still rather have turkey, which is absolutely fine, but that is a Christmas tradition that will stay forever. We will always have lasagna at Christmas. That's never going to change. Moving on down, Kenny, I don't know whether it's Kenny or Keeney. Again, sorry if I'm not saying it right, but her first question had made me laugh so loud. I was flattered, but I found it really funny. She said that I have an interesting sense of style with hats and scarves and things, and is it something that I've picked up from my mother or my grandmother? I am a self-confessed tomboy. I wear jeans and hoodies all the time, checked shirts sometimes if I'm feeling adventurous. I hate wearing a dress. Yeah, I hate wearing skirts. I hate wearing heels, although I do get dressed up sometimes, not very often. It's more about accessories for me. I like bright scarves, I like nice earrings, and I've always had a thing about hats, even, you know, since I was really small. There used to be a TV sitcom on called Blossom, and Maya Bialik, who plays Sheldon's girlfriend in Big Bang Theory, if any of you watch that, she was the main character, and she always had the craziest hats on, and I kind of latched onto that when I was small, and I've always liked hats, so yeah, I think that's kind of gone from there. The headwear thing is more controlling my hair because my hair is wild, and I'm sure you've seen many videos where I've come in from outside and it's all like up like this. So putting on a scarf or putting a hat on is a much more effective way than trying to sit and, you know, like straighten it or tong it or whatever. It's just easier. So I wish that I could say that I am a fashionista, Keeney, but actually it's completely accidental. I just like bright colours. I'm really flattered that you think that though, so thank you. I think this next question might actually be my favourite question, full stop. And the question is, as children we find things magical, and as adults we lose our sense of wonder. What have you never lost your sense of wonder for? That is one that is really easy for me to answer, surprisingly, and I didn't think it would be. I have been to so many places, and even here at home right now, just outside the door of this house, nature never ceases to amaze me. I cannot believe that we live in such a beautiful world, and that nature is capable of creating things that are so vast or so pretty that they take your breath away. And anywhere I visit, anywhere I travel, I like to find pretty places or unusual places of interest, and I am always amazed, and I just think to myself, we're such insignificant little specks compared to Mother Nature. And the same goes for the weather as well. We're never going to win that. If Mother Nature decides she's going to sort us out, then that is happening, and it's on such a colossal scale, it leaves me awestruck every time. So there we go. But that's a brilliant question. That is an absolutely outstanding question. So I would like to give the award for outstanding contribution to Katara Chaos Weaver. Well done, my dear. Again, another name I can't pronounce, or don't know if I'm pronounced right. Kailara. Sorry, really sorry. The funniest or strangest Christmas gift I've ever been given. Not me personally, but I really want to tell this story, so I'm going to do it anyway. Last Christmas, my mother bought my father a windsock. You know, like they have at airports, big orange things that the wind goes through so they know what direction the wind's going in. My mum bought my dad a windsock. I don't actually know the story behind why he wanted one, but I knew he wanted one, so my mum went out of her way to find one, and she bought it, and she thought it was a little tiny one, and it wasn't. It was massive. It wasn't like a full-size runway one, but it was pretty big. So that was fine. We laughed at that, first of all, because my mum always buys my dad a silly present, you know, a daft present, and that was it, and we could not stop laughing when we saw this windsock, because Dad thought it was a pair of high-vis overalls at first. I'll fold it up, and he's trying to put them on, and I'm like, no, it's... And he's like, is it a sleeping bag? No, it's a windsock. So a few days passed, and when my mum and Dad returned home from being here, I got a picture message through, and my dad was incredibly proud of himself because he had erected his windsock. And it looked really good, and it was flying because it was windy. They had some high winds about 2 days later, and the winds got stronger and stronger, and the windsock flew away. It snapped and it disappeared. The worst thing about it was those high winds kept up for 3 or 4 days. Now, it's not a thing you can miss. It's bright orange and it's massive, you know. It's kind of difficult not to see it. So we did look around to see if we could find it. Mum and Dad looked for it. When I was down home, I looked for it. Could not find it. A couple of days later, because the winds were still blowing, it blew back into their garage. It was a returning windsock. Wow, really strange present. So there you go. That's probably the weirdest Christmas gift I can think of, but it was also incredibly funny as well, because it's quite ironic that someone's windsock blows away. If you could have any superpower, what would it be? I thought for a long time about this. Excuse me, I'll have a drink. Lazy Jack Daniels. If I could have one superpower, it would be the ability to touch someone and be able to infuse them with positivity and motivation and inspiration. Is that too many things? Am I allowed all those things? Yeah, I'd like to be able to instantly uplift someone's mood to, like, as a catalyst to enable them to follow a dream or be inspired to do something. I think that would be really, really cool. In today's world, we're much more aware of mental illness, and depression is a huge part of that. And I'd like to be able to help at least some people just to get over it, even momentarily, to give them the chance to be able to do something that will make them feel worthy of themselves and have a bit of self-respect and be able to, you know, have a bit of self-achievement. I think it'd be an awesome superpower to have. Shilpa asked me a few questions about books because I read a lot, and Sandy had also asked about books as well. My 3 favourite books to read. I never read the same thing twice. However, there are a few books that I've read more than once. The first one would be Wuthering Heights. It's just everybody in that story is angry. It's hilarious. For such an old stuffy book, those are some angry people. That made me laugh. I like it a lot. The other book that I've read repeatedly and is still a source of much inspiration and joy to me is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It is an amazing little book. Even if you're not a reader, it's a really important book. You have to read that book. And I reread that a lot. When I feel as if I've lost my way a little bit, or perhaps my mental health isn't great, I read that book and it is so worth it. And it's not a long book, it's not a big book, and it's not a complicated book, it's just a good book. The last book, I would probably have to say Fight Club. Yeah, I love that book. I love the story, I love the film, I love the fact that the film was really close to the book. Fight Club. There we go. My favourite book character, I don't have one. I can honestly say hand on heart, I don't have one. When I read stories, I don't get, and I know a lot of people do, I don't get emotionally attached to characters. It's more the story that does it for me. Obviously, you have to buy into the character, but I never seem to get an attachment the way some people do. You know, I don't cry when characters in books die, that kind of thing. So I really don't have an answer for that. I'm terribly sorry, Shilpa, I just don't have an answer for it. And the very last question is from Sandy, and that is, what type of books do you like? I will read literally anything, and there is only one book that I have ever started and not finished, and this is going to be very, very controversial, and that was Harry Potter. I picked up the first Harry Potter novel and I read about the first 3 paragraphs and I just went, I can't read this, and I put it down and I never picked it back up again. I have read some absolute stinkers, and I know they're absolute stinkers, but I had to finish them. The genres of books that I like to read, I like fantasy novels to a degree, and there are some that hit the spot for me more than others. I like a sort of epic fantasy, which is quite kind of old-fashioned now. Everyone wants like really quick-paced storylines, but I like it kind of drawn out, it makes it more interesting. The other genre that I go to, it's kind of like I call them the comfy pair of slippers genre, is crime thrillers. I can chew through any sort of forensic or crime related book and I just eat them all up. I love them. My favourite authors for that genre include Tess Gerritsen, who is absolutely phenomenal. I love her writing. I like David Baldacci as well, it's another one of my favourites. But I mean, I will read anything. I have started in more recent years, I would say probably into my sort of late 20s, I decided to go back and read some of the classics that I should probably have read at school that I knew I would appreciate more as an adult, than I would have done as a teenager. And I have to say that I find some of it quite stuffy, and it's hard work because the language is so different from the way a novel would be written nowadays. But I seem to be able to persevere with Dickens. And again, it's back to this sort of older fashioned writing style of long drawn out, you know, epic stories where nothing really happens until like chapter 72. And most people don't have the patience to wait until chapter 72. But I seem to have got over that. So I quite enjoy a bit of Dickens. But I am trying to read some of the classics, and some of them are just terrible. I mean, they're awful. They're incessantly dull. What was it I read recently? Emma by Jane Austen. It's basically a woman who has nothing to do and creates several non-events because she's bored, and then there's more non-events. Doesn't do it for me, sorry guys. If you like that book, I'm terribly sorry, but it's just not my cup of tea. That is us. Whew, that was a marathon. That is us for the question and answer section. I have answered every single one's questions. That is the joy of having a small channel. I know this is a really long video. It's going to be like an hour and a half. It's going to be like an hour and a half long. But I felt it was important. You guys give me so much support with the channel, and you are so lovely. Really, you're all lovely, lovely people. And you take the time to do stuff like this to the point where I have to like colour code the questions. So thank you so much for your effort and giving me these questions. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and you've learned stuff about me. And I just want you to know that it's really, really appreciated. So I hope you all once again have a very nice festive period, and say Merry Christmas to everyone who's celebrating Christmas today. And we shall see you tomorrow for a bit more of Cavemas from the Colour Cave. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you later. Entry to the giveaway is now closed, so thank you for all your entries, and the winner shall be drawn in an upcoming Cavemas video. Even if I did not answer your question in this video, you will still be entered into the draw. So good luck with that, and we shall draw the winners soon.